Starting or what?
Go on.
I'm Jake Peterson.
And I'm Will Schademann.
Today we'll be talking about the ACC tournament.
First, I will be discussing like the team that I have winning the thing, and in my opinion, it's going to be Duke, folks. Duke, led by Coach Mike Krzyzewski, probably one of the best coaches of all time, as far as I'm concerned, has a pretty good team this year with Tyus Jones, Zahir Okafor, and Margaret Jones as well, filling in for Rasheed Schuleman, who was kicked off the team, the first ever Duke player to get kicked off the team due to some allegations involving him. So, and that's why he was kicked off the team. And also they have a really good bench as well with the youngest Plumlee brother, Marshall, and he brings a lot of good depth as far as with the kind of like the center position, and kind of helps Okafor out whenever he's either in foul trouble or is struggling from the floor.
Yeah, I think the ACC is very top heavy. I think you have 4 to 5 teams in this conference that can legitimately do some damage in the NCAA tournament, and then the rest I think are just completely not even worth talking about. To me, the ACC is probably the second, maybe even third strongest conference. Them and the Big Ten I think are very close. I think as far as who wins the ACC tournament, I think it's going to be Duke. I think Duke will play North Carolina in the final. I think North Carolina will beat Louisville, and I think then they'll also beat Virginia. I think teams that can beat Virginia are teams that can move the ball well, and I think North Carolina can do that. And I think Duke wins again. I think they get 3 straight off of North Carolina. With that being said, I do think the ACC is just a lot needs to be figured out with this conference as far as where teams should be positioned in the tournament. I think Notre Dame, there's a lot of question marks with that team still. I think there's a lot of question marks with Louisville. I think there's a lot of question marks with even North Carolina and Virginia. Virginia's offense hasn't been very efficient this year. So I think when you look at the ACC from top to bottom, not the strongest conference, but also not the weakest conference. I just think they're very, very top heavy at this point. The top half of the league is as strong as any conference in the country, but as far as just the whole conference, though, it's not the strongest.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Jake. Yeah, just like what Jake mentioned, it's pretty top heavy as far as I'm concerned. Just like what Jake mentioned as well, because pretty much all you have is Duke, North Carolina, Louisville, Virginia, and maybe Notre Dame. Yeah. And like the other teams are just, I don't know what to call them, they're terrible.
Yeah.
And then they have they have no offensive motion. Those bottom tier teams, and they're just flat out terrible. And also the reason why Virginia has been struggling is Justin Anderson, one of their big guys, have been playing for the Cavaliers, have been out for 6 to 8 weeks with a broken hand, and he also has had an appendectomy as well. So that's delayed his return as well. But they've done a pretty good job replacing his production with guys stepping up off the bench and playing well for Tony Bennett and Roy Williams. Roy Williams had a revival year this year, Jake, because last year's North Carolina team was by far the worst I've ever seen Roy Williams coach. Roy Williams has brought in some new talent that can play, started by Marcus Page, an Iowa guy from Marion, Iowa, and Kennedy Meeks, who is a humongous force down at the post for North Carolina, and you got the guy like J.P. Tokoto, and also who provides a really good lift off on the 3 spot for the Tar Heels. And as far as Louisville goes, it's just another Rick Pitino year, folks. Rick Pitino produces talent like crazy. It seems like every single year he produces talent. I don't get how he gets it, but somehow he does it. Obviously, you get to talk about Montrezl Harrell, who as far as I'm concerned is an athletic beast. Because he can jump from anywhere. He can jump from the 3-point line, and he'll be able to dunk it. And also with Chris Jones, even though he's been kicked off the team, he was a pretty influential role for the Cardinals, but due to the role that he's had on some off-court issues, he has been kicked off the team. But they've been relying a lot on Harrell for the use of scoring points. And then you got Notre Dame, who is, it's kind of hard to to know if they're actually going to be in the tournament this year. Because right now they're kind of declared like a bubble team, because like they really don't have any really good wins, like except for maybe one of the wins was Duke, maybe one good win, and you need more wins to be in the NCAA tournament than just one. You have to have multiple wins, and you get to have a good RPI, BPI, and your strength of schedule also has to be in the top at least 70 to be qualified in the NCAA tournament. And I don't think Notre Dame and Mike Bray have shown enough, in my opinion, for the selection committee to choose them in the field of 68. And that's the last of that.
Yeah, I think the big problem that I have with the ACC, and I think Will touched on it, but especially with Notre Dame. Notre Dame hasn't shown me a lot. They're in the top 10 somehow. I don't know how they are, but I mean, I think it's like Will said, though, they haven't really had any impressive wins. They get blasted by Duke twice, and I just don't quite understand. I remember they lost by over 30 points to Duke at Duke that one game, and they stayed in the top 10. They stayed at number 10. I don't quite understand what they're trying to evaluate here with Notre Dame. They can't play against anybody who shoots the three ball. Whoever shoots the three ball on them and hits them, Notre Dame's screwed. They can't win. They can't defend around the perimeter at all. With that being said, though, I think the rest of the ACC, teams like Louisville and Virginia, who are good defensively, they're terrible offensively. And I just don't quite understand why these teams get so much love, because I think when you see college basketball to where it's heading right now, and it's not in a good direction with this 35-second shot clock, I think Virginia and Louisville have made a point that this shot clock is way too long. And I think if they were to shorten it, college basketball would be much funner to watch. It really and truly would. As far as that goes, when I was watching that Virginia-Louisville game, when they were playing in Virginia, I remember somebody asking me, what was the score in that game? I said 4-2. I mean, it was that low scoring of a game. It was bad. It was just bad all around. I just don't quite understand why the media gives them so much love, because frankly, they're all but impressive to me. And I think wherever that might end up for these two teams in the tournament, it would not faze me one bit if they're to get, they'd be a couple teams that get knocked out in the first round, because they just cannot score. And it's just amazing to me that the media gives them as much love as they do.
I definitely agree. Yeah, the shot clock, way too long. Yeah. Because I'm not kidding, whenever I go to a Crane game, you guys see the tickets, and I'm not kidding, I feel like I'm watching I feel like I'm watching basketball, I feel like I'm watching nursing home basketball, because it's taking so much forever. 35 seconds, only 2 possessions in the actual game minute. Are you kidding me? I don't care. Short at the 30. I don't care. Do something. Because that's just ridiculous on how all they're doing is sitting there for 25 seconds and dribbling the ball for 25 seconds, and they have 10 seconds left on the shot clock. And they're like, oh, I guess we better do something. It's just ridiculous on how long that shot clock is, and that's the reason why defenses are so good, because they have 35 seconds to prepare.
And you don't see as much creativity anymore from as many coaches anymore. You just see a bunch of this pick and roll stuff.
Yeah, pick and roll and ball screens and flashing to the corners and shooting threes from 25 feet. It's the creativity is terrible in college basketball. There's no Princeton offense. There's maybe a couple teams that I can think of. Georgetown is one of them who runs the Princeton offense and who uses a creative way to get the ball into the basket. Because it seems in my opinion, all college coaches are all right, what you're gonna do is back screen, and then if you don't get the ball, you go to the corner.
Yeah.
And which is ridiculous. I don't get why the creativity has gone downhill. Maybe it's because of the youngness of the coaches, and maybe that could be it. I don't know what it is.
I think it's a combination of things. It goes in cycles all the way around. I think when you look at the conference that uses the shot clock the most efficiently, it's the Big 12. That's why I think they're the best conference in the country. You got to look at a team like Iowa State who just breaks in transition like no team you ever see on offense. I mean, you got an explosive offense there. Kansas, uses it pretty effectively. But then you got teams in that conference too, like Kansas State and Texas Tech. They use every bit of that shot clock they can, and those are perfect examples of why we need to shorten it, because it's ridiculous. It really is. And then when I'm watching these games in the ACC, and then it's not only the ACC. I think the Big Ten does the same thing. And even in some cases, the lower half of the Big East, I think, does it at times too. I think it's just something that there needs to be a change there. Now, whether if it needs to be the shot clock needs to be shortened, or people have had an absurd idea of getting rid of the zone defense, but I think that's ridiculous because that's taken away college basketball itself. So I just feel like that right now in this day of age, we need to get younger and sleeker with the shot clock deal, or the other option is to also prolong the college student's career in college basketball. I think that's the other problem. I think Fran Fraschilla touched on it on ESPN. I think part of the reason why you see low scores anymore is because you see these guys leaving, these superstar players leaving early for the NBA, and that leaves everything else behind. And I think that's another option that they could do to make sure that college students don't leave college until sophomore year. I personally believe that a college athlete should stay there all 4 years no matter what, but that's just not the way it is anymore.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, because